Folks, here we go. Game 73. The Morphy Thompson match continues. Six-match game held in 1859. And as you can see, Morphy without a queen knight, the empty B1 square. Okay, he's playing giving Thompson knight odds. He's been playing the whole match like this. And he starts this one off once again with birds opening, F4. He's had success winning the last two games while dropping the first three. So he's sticking with what's working. And here you'd see Thompson played the last two games in which he lost. He played D5. So now he tries something different. He plays F5, and he tries to copy Morphy, parrot him for the first few moves. Here they go. Bishop E7. Let's see right here. I think, yep, Morphy castles on move. Let's see, wait, move 5. And then you have, here you go, Thompson playing B6. Morphy playing B3. Looks like they're going to put the bishops on B7 and B2, right? Well, get this. Thompson plays D5. D5 at this point. Morphy follows through, bishop B2. And now you think, oh, maybe this is coming. No. He plays it to A6, folks. A6. Trying to get an exchange of bishops going. I mean, he can't move. I mean, yes, the knight's in the way. But let's say if he could move, he wouldn't want to move it off this diagonal here because then he'd lose the exchange, right? So it's sort of like he's pinning this bishop to the rook, right? But as you can see, Morphy simply just pushes the pawn up. Always a valuable resource if you could avoid if you don't want to trade, you don't want to, avoid those situations by throwing a pawn in the way. You block it. Now, they say here, the old master's comment, as he cannot force the exchange of bishops, Thompson should have played bishop to B7. It was better. Okay, so what are you going to do? He plays it here, and Morphy blocks it. Okay, let's see where it goes now. Thompson castles. Morphy bringing his rook to the C file. He feels he could trade pawns, right? C takes D5, and now you'd have the rook on the open file. Well, anyway, Thompson pushes C5, and this makes Morphy decides to move his queen to E1. Okay, here we go now. The knight develops for Thompson. He gets his last minor piece in the game, right? Now, Morphy jumps the knight to G5. And, there's situations like, just as an example, I'm going to play some totally wasted moves for black, right? You'd say, oh, maybe, maybe the queen came here to leap up, okay? And then you got a threat going again. Well, another useless move. You take the defender of H7, right? When he takes back, you get mate. See that? Now, that's as simple as can be. I know it's 3 moves away, and I just shuffled the rook back and forth like a dope, right? Just to show you that. But there's just some ideas that can occur in the Dutch, in the birds opening, which is a reverse Dutch. You put the queen, you get him on her, you get her on this diagonal, and you could come up maybe with the knight and do a cheapo checkmate, right? But as you can tell, the knight coming here has an immediate threat of taking the pawn, right? Undefended pawn. That's what you get when you move the bishop. When you put it on B7 or A6, right? This guy, because now Morphy still has the D pawn protecting E3, but look at this, because Thompson pushed his D pawn up to D5. This guy's a backward pawn. You see it? Like he's not on an open file though, so he's not as vulnerable. But this knight leaping up is putting pressure, and he's threatening to come on in and fork the king, the queen and rook, win the exchange, right? So what does Thompson do? How does he defend the E pawn? Well, you could bring the bishop back, makes sense, like Shred is suggesting, right? Now you're just going back to the starting square, and you still got your queen rook, right? You're still gonna have trouble getting him in the game. So anyway, what does Thompson do? What Thompson does is he defends it with the queen. Let me just turn the engine off here. Look. He defends it with the queen, folks, and the old masters give him double question mark. A total blunder. Now, with the engine, Shredder finds that it's not as bad as it seems, but you can quickly, maybe you see what the old masters had seen. Do you see the move that Morphy plays? Okay, I'll show you what he does. He plays the pawn takes pawn. Now remember, this guy's hanging over here now, right? So Thompson has two pieces hanging, the knight and the bishop. Okay? And what Thompson ends up doing is taking the bishop, okay? And Morphy takes the knight because now, as you can see, the pawn is attacking the black queen. So black doesn't have time to save his bishop and retreat. And Thompson takes the pawn, which now Morphy gobbles up the bishop. In essence, they traded bishops, and Morphy got Thompson's knight on c6 for a pawn, right? So basically, the knight odds is gone. He basically is down a pawn, I believe, right? At this stage, he's 2, 4, 6, 7, 2, 4, 6. Oh, no, there is no pawn. Where did Morphy win that pawn? Oh yeah, he took on d5. Let's go back. Here, right here, he wins the d5 pawn. So all right, so he wins that back. So he doesn't lose a pawn, is what I'm trying to say. They trade bishops, but first he takes the knight while he can, hitting the queen. There's no way he's gonna move this, right? And try to save it and then lose the queen. So he takes the pawn. And Morphy gobbles up the bishop. Okay, so he's not even down a pawn. So he just saved himself the knight odds, right? So now it's even Steven. But here's what Shredder finds, which is crazy. Look, and maybe some of you saw this too. So I guess it's not too hard to see. But on this pawn takes pawn, bishop takes, right? Morphy taking the knight. The queen is threatened and the bishop's still hanging. Well, what about queen to d3? This is what Shredder does, and it seems to work out for black. I searched and searched, and there's really like black comes out okay. He basically comes out still up a minor piece. Now let's look at it, right? There's really three moves that you can look at. One, Shredder likes this one, right? Attacking the queen. Two, remember that bishop's threatening to win the rook here, the exchange. So you could just move the rook here, attacking him. Or you could just go for let him attack your rook, you attack his rook and win a pawn over here. Right? You're attacking that one. You take me, I'll take you. Now something like that, think of this. He takes your rook, right? And you can go for the rook, but this knight, you can say, is posted well, but it's not on an outpost. It's not protected, so it might get booted out of there. But if you can maintain a knight up there, it's equal to a rook anyway, right? Maybe the knight could eventually get back to here. That's the outpost on the board, folks. E5. No black pawns could kick him out of there, and he's supported by a pawn, right? Beautiful outpost. Now, anyway, if he doesn't want to take the rook, you see Shredder doesn't want to do it. So he's saying to take back. You can't take back with the king because the black queen is protecting it. So you'd have to take back this way. And what does that do? Like we talked about, you're just trading down pieces, helping the side that has the extra piece. Now, Shredder says to go for the pawn, right? But what if you just eliminate the queens? You're that much further, right? You're that much further. And look at this. Now you can see you don't even give up the exchange. And basically, when the dust settles, White's down a rook now. He started down a minor piece given knight odds, and now he gave up the exchange. So in essence, that turns out to be now you're down a rook. Forget it. And what is it? Black's up -3, right? -3. Maybe he has a little play with this pawn. You bring the You go there, you tax it, you know. Can you play something? You can take him. Can you play this guy here? I don't know. Is that even a move? You could double the F pawns. It's tough because then the knight has nowhere. Where could the knight even go? If he takes over here, right? Now the knight can't get back to G5. That pawn's covering that. And all right, he's going to clear. He's going to maybe make the D4 square available. If they trade, then it opens the C file, which plays into White's. You know, he could probably even do it though because he's up a full rook. He's up a rook. It's just that pawn on C7 is all that White could play for. And why give White an open C file to defend that pawn, right? So he comes up, chases the knight, and the knight has nowhere to go, as I was mentioning. So I guess you'd have to play this to save him. And already finally takes this back. And what are you going to do, folks? You're dead in the water. I mean, you got a beautifully posted knight, but that might even be flimsy because you get rid of this guy and he falls, you know. But you're down a rook no matter what. However, even if you want to just say you're down this rook, if this is worth a rook, you're down a minor piece now, right? All right. So anyway, -4 is the evaluation by Shredder. So that's clearly, you know, that's a loss. And if you want to protect that pawn, I mean, either way, he takes, right? Goes here. You double, you're going after the C pawn. It's got nothing, folks. There you go. Look, he takes it. You trade, and there you go. You're down a rook still. What are you going to do? All right, no good. These lines are no good, right? So you can't let him take here. And so knight taking E6 just is not good. Not good. Too weak, right? So you try, you know, okay. If you try going after him, he goes nowhere to retreat except H5, right? I guess he could go there, right? Then you just boot him. You boot him with at the H pawn maybe, and then he's forced to go here. And, you know, with that, anyway, I looked at it just straight away. He goes here straight away. You bring, I guess, okay. You go for him. You're threatening the rook, right? Why not? You win the pawn. He moves there. I believe bishop E5 is the move he plays. This is a move? I don't know. Why would this? Anyway, look, if you go here, get a load of this. If he takes, let's see, yeah. He can't take here because then you get something like this. I guess he can take. You win the exchange at least. Okay, so you win the rook. Now, what does he do? He goes here. He's going after your rook. And let's see, you're going to give him the rook, but you're going after the bishop. I tell you, it gets crazy. Like one could see this deep. I mean, with all the choices, right? But let's stick with it. Let's just see where this goes. And we're doing it fast, folks. Again, could be some better moves for both sides. You're giving back the exchange, right? So now he's still down on my piece. He's down the bishop, right? So, I mean, it looks like black still holds an advantage that is meaningful, you know. He's close to, it says here, evaluation, -1.87. I mean, he's got the extra piece, folks. What are the pawns? You got 7 pawns to 5. All right, so you picked up 2 pawns along the way. So it might be a fight. That might be a fight. That might be the best line out of them all. I don't know. You save the A pawn for now. Let's see, where does he go from here? You know, you got the rook on the 7th putting pressure, but, you know, you get the dark square bishop protecting G7. Look at this. He goes to trade. Already he's up for it. He's up the extra piece for the 2 pawns. I mean, heck, folks, there you go. He's defending his second rank. Now you can't grab a pawn here. It's, you know, if he trades down, each trade, if he was to trade rooks, now, you know, come on. Black controls the light squares. You get it? He controls the light squares. What's he going to do? Matter of fact, this is forced because bishop to f7's coming, right? Look. Or over here, you attack it from here even better. I was looking at this. Because if he tries to advance, this bishop gets him, right? He's dead in the water. Now, Shredder likes coming from this angle, because if he moves up, not only does he lose this one, but he loses this one, right? All right, so it would be better to actually take this one, because white doesn't, this pawn is dead next, right? He can't protect him from the dark squares, so this pawn would be dead in the water. I mean, forget it, right? So there's no way, even at this point, if you don't trade rooks, if you don't trade queens, I mean, what do you have, folks? You're down. You got 2 pawns for the minor piece. Believe me, as black can force trades, you know, that piece, that extra bishop's going to mean a lot. Those 2 pawns are not worth the bishop. Okay, so anyway, that one, white had some play. It was pretty crazy, right? He takes there, the rook moves, you bring the bishop in. Now, he doesn't take here because you got that going, right? And that opened up all this crazy tactics. Knight goes there. And, okay, so anyway, that's what we just looked at. But believe it or not, see, Shredder doesn't even want to take the pawn. He wants to go here. Okay? So just to show you, this is a better move. Watch what ends up happening now. So while he can, white goes in to win the exchange, attacking the queen and the rook on a8. All right, he gives up this rook. White takes back. Here comes the knight. Going after the rook. Rook moves. And now the d pawn is hanging, right? He takes with the knight. You can't pin it to the queen because he's got the bishop over here still, right? So this is a slow. I'll tell you. Look at this. He's going after this rook, right? You can't. You gotta. This is the only square. Now he leaps back. Now, folks. Now it's an outpost. There's no d pawn. He took him, right? Look right here. You'd have hopes of maybe being able to play d3. Right, and booting that knight out. Well, he takes him, and now he goes back and harasses this rook again, and now he's in an outpost on e4, and we don't have the right color bishop to trade, so that would mean we'd have to get rid of that knight, we'd have to give up a rook for it, right? So, I mean, forget it. Now, at least white doubles rooks, but big deal. He wins the pawn, threatens the bishop, bishop retreats. He's down. Let's see. How do you look at this, right? You can say, okay, white's got the 2 rooks and a bishop. Black has 1 rook, 2 bishops, and a knight, right? So that knight is as strong as a rook, no doubt about it. So basically, it's, here you go, right here. Black's playing with a light square bishop, and white doesn't have one. He's down a piece still. Minus 3.58 is the evaluation. All right, so let's go back. No good. No good. Rook to f2. No good, folks. So that leaves the last one, which the one that I think Shredder liked the best, actually. Give me a second here so I start up my car. Okay. Here you go. We'll go with this one. Rook to c3. We'll see where this goes, right? Now, where's the queen? Where's the queen going to go? Only, let's see. He could go here. Decides to go all the way back to a6. Now you save the exchange, right? You don't want to lose this rook. So now you chase him. Now he doesn't have to go here. He could come back here attacking the pawn, right? And at this point, all right, he threatens the rook, threatens to win the exchange. The rook moves once again to c8, and you got this pawn hanging. You could push it, but I don't know. Let's see. What Shredder wants to play, wants to go after this pawn. The f queen over here going after this one, maybe? Is that worth doing? So that's the thing. If you give the engine time, it may come up with a better move, but it likes queen. Oh, because also you got. I'm thinking offensively, going after the F5 pawn. Well, really, he's playing defense, protecting A2, folks. Else the queen comes in and takes there and threatens your dark square bishop. All right, so you move to B1, you protect the A2 pawn. Here he comes. He's coming in after the rook on F2. Actually, he's forking both rooks. He's going to get that exchange back. You see how crazy it is, folks? It's crazy, right? This guy, I don't even know it. He moves this rook. He decides to move this one. Save the pawn. He protects his F5 pawn. That opens up the dark square bishop, though. Look at this. He's pulling back, maybe queen B2, and he's threatening mate on the long diagonal. Maybe that's an idea. Look, he takes him. All right, he gets the exchange back. So now black is basically up a whole rook. All right, look at this. He takes here. He takes here. Okay. If he takes this, we threaten mate on the long diagonal with queen to B2. Like I said, folks, the long diagonal was opened up with G6, this move right here. This move right here, G6 by black. Okay, protecting the F5 pawn, but, you know, that allowed that idea to develop. Here it is. He wins back the exchange, and then with this sacrifice, look at that. He could just sack it. And now with queen to B2, what could he do? We're threatening mate. If he tries to defend here, right, save on G7, he cuts off the escape square. Look, if we try to come in now, he's got one escape square right there, right? So we cut him off with the knight. No one could take the knight yet, so we're threatening mate now on H. Look at it, on H8. So if he cut, look, this is the best he could do, just prolong the game. Well, all right, go there. Look at this. Look, nothing could stop him. There it is, right? Beautiful. All right, but that wasn't forced. That was just a blunder on black's part. I threw it in, right? I threw in a silly move by taking queen there. All right, the king's trying to get out now while he can. All right, he comes up to F7. We give the check. Notice that the knight takes the light squares, and the dark square battery white has takes away these other squares here, right? Takes away these other squares. So he goes here with check. He's going to have to take that guy out. He can't have it. All right, so now we come in. Let's see, he goes here. We check. He comes up, we take, we check, he comes up. I guess he's going to slither his way out of it, huh? He's going to get away. Look at this. Check, he goes in here. Oh, boy. We got nothing left. It's all over. Right? We got nothing left. And we take this guy, I guess. Can he go in for a win? No. Here come the pawn. No way. There it is. The steam runs out. It was nice while it lasted, right? We're almost down 5, so it's not enough. Black's got 2 rooks. He's 2 rooks up, folks. Look. 2 rooks up. Matter of fact, white only has control of the dark squares by putting the bishop here. He cuts those 2. See, he stops those 2 pawns from moving right away. Nothing left. Nothing left. Okay? He could even sack a rook, right? He could even sack a rook for that pawn. And he'd still, look, he'd eliminate white's last piece, and he still got it. Okay, so now, I mean, you know, you could try this. It doesn't matter, right? Hey, look at that. He'll sack him. And there you go, and he'll eat them up with he'll eat the 2 pawns on the G file up. There's no way. You're up a whole rook, right? So we go all the way back. No good. Okay, so you go here, you check. He's got to take him out. You give the check first, he goes back. you know. They're going to eliminate the C pawn. If we take here, I would think goes here. If we try to mate him on the dark squares, queen d6 protects, right? Protects, so that doesn't really work. And now the bishop on e6 stops our check on the light squares. We can't really do anything there. So, yeah, we're still down. There's nothing left. Not enough. Not enough. He would stop us trying to mate on e7, and we really don't have anything left. He comes right in there. Forget it. Forget it. So, this is no good. Right? So we pretty much looked at these lines. And it's amazing. It's like the old masters just put it like double question mark, no good for black here. When he played Morphy attacking the e6 pawn, threatening a knight fork, right? Queen and rook. And he plays this. Pawn takes. He takes down here. You don't take back, you take the knight first. And there you go, look. And black retains. He retains the minor piece. All right, so I mean, you could play around with it. I tried many. If I tried combining these ideas, I tried whatever I could come up with. Shredder seems to find a way out and always retain that extra advantage, that extra piece that he started with. So Thompson, by taking queen takes pawn, he just gives up. It's like he didn't even think of queen d3. All right, puts Morphy right in the game now. It's even Steven here. Okay, so that was move 14. Queen takes bishop. All right, here comes Thompson. Queen rook to the d file. All right, Morphy king rook to the d file. See that? He doesn't feel like this rook belongs here at all in this game. He wants him over here. He's going to push d4. All right, Thompson boots the knight. He had enough of that guy up there already. Retreats to f3. Nice outpost on e5 if he wants. Rook up, right? And here comes the knight, where it belongs. e5 outpost. Okay. Attacking the queen, right? Queen slides back to e1. Now, we got this move. We got this move by Morphy. Shredder likes this, I guess, going after the a pawn. Okay, let's stick with the game. Here we go. d3. And here we go. I guess Thompson's thinking to capture this guy. Maybe that knight's very strong on that outpost. But here you got Morphy. The idea behind d3, right, is to play e4. Look at that rook. He's getting nowhere to go, right? Well, Thompson plays pawn takes pawn, and now pawn takes pawn, attacking the rook, but he trades it off. All right, so it forces a trade of rooks pretty much. Now he takes back, and he's hitting this bishop. Now, does he want to take here? He could, but then he puts the bishop now on the outpost. See that? But again, you got to remember, Thompson gave that extra piece away. So it's looking good for Morphy now. He's slightly up. This is anybody's game, really. He's probably ending the draw if played accurate. Matter of fact, he's going after e4 here, right? So we got one of two things. We could trade this off to protect e4, or we could play the rook like Shredder says. I guess you keep the bishop. But you just gave black the d file. He maneuvers, still protecting e4. Here comes the knight move. All right, retain that bishop, and you go from there. Who knows? Is the bishop better? You get the queen and rook off the board, and the bishop they say is better in the end game. It could cover both sides of the board. It moves quicker. The knight could be clumsy, but you never know. Maybe the knight could find a nice outpost and be very strong. So that could go all different ways. Look, the evaluation is nearly equal at this point, right? So that could have happened. It could have went this way. Thompson could have taken, but he retains his bishop. He brings it back to c7. And here we got pawn to g3. Notice that Morphy has the better pawn structure because Thompson is stuck with this e pawn, folks, which is an isolated pawn. Hello? No pawns could protect that guy. The e6 pawn right here, folks. This guy right here on a light square. Thompson has a dark square bishop. He can't help that pawn. So could be a weakness, could mean something. Now, Shredder's saying to just take the knight at this point. Take the knight, but that's not what Thompson does. He decides to move this pawn up to b5. Maybe trying to create a pass pawn. He's got 3-2 on the. He's got 3 against 2 on the queen side. So maybe his idea is to play bishop b6. Also, he's making room for his bishop on just to show. Morphy actually moves. Let's see. He moves his king onto the light squares, and Thompson. Maybe he's going to plant the bishop here, which would have been aiming directly at the white king. This would be a nice diagonal, and he plays c4 to open up that diagonal, and so those are some ideas. But b5 by Thompson. Morphy moves the king up off the dark squares, and here you got queen to a8. Here you got the knight, the black knight, and the black queen attacking the white's e pawn. So what happens? Well, you see Shredder's move, right? That's what Morphy plays. In a sense, forking the rook and the knight, right? He's forking another knight. Now, they claim this threat which Black made on his last move, the threat to the e pawn, to Morphy's e pawn, which Black made on his last move, White ingeniously forces him to carry out, thereby putting himself a pawn up in the endgame. Black cannot, of course, exchange knights. Now, why did they say this, folks? Why did they say, well, look at this. Look, you take, now the rook comes down, recaptures, okay? And you're attacking the bishop. If the bishop moves, well, now you got what's called the windmill, which is a check by the rook taking, and you're supported by the bishop on the long diagonal. Now the king moves, right? And now this is only square. He moves into line with a discovered check. Rook can move like this, right? And you see the bishop is given the check to the black king. He can't come up to these two squares because one, the bishop, and the rook covers h7. So he'd have to go back, right? Well, now in this case, we can win the queen. That's something you would see. And you usually see the rook can keep moving, capturing things along the 7th rank. And then at the end, he can take his prize, which would be nice to win the queen for the rook, right? But in this scenario, White could just finish him off with mate. See this? Let's see. He goes here. Oh, he could get the check there. He blocks, right? And there you go. You're going to mate like that. Okay. Nicely done, right? So you don't even have to capture the queen. But when you see the windmill in games, usually the rook just eats up everything along the 7th rank. And then you could eat him up, keep coming back and forth. And then eventually, right, you go here, he has to go back, right? You go, when he comes here, you check him, right? He goes, you take a pawn, say. He's in check. He has to go back. You check him again. He goes there. You have to take another pawn, right? He goes here. You check him again. He goes there. No other move. You take another pawn. And then when he finally, his last move, you take the queen. Like something like that. Or you win a rook or something. All right. So that's called the windmill. Devastating maneuver if you can get it. But in this case, this is what the old masters were. I think that's why they were saying black can obviously not take the knight like this, because if you're protecting against the windmill. I mean, I don't even know this piece is threatening. You're threatening the windmill, right? And there's no way he could like come back to protect it. But you're probably throwing the pillows at the screen. Yeah, black has rook to f7, defending along the rank, and now both threats are. You can't take him, and he can't hit g7, right? So even with taking, takes, right? Now the problem would be nice if white could pick up these pawns, hit check, and then fork and take this one, directly take that one. But what happens is you give up this pawn now, and he takes with check. So this is no good. This is pretty much a draw, right? So black could have taken if he wanted. I mean, I guess it would be a draw most likely. Okay? So there you go. Like the white has a slight, I mean, it's not even one pawn advantage, okay? So Thompson, the old masters mentioned this, but okay, I still got time. I'm checking the clock, folks. So anyway, he can take the knight if he wants, but he doesn't. Okay. So they say he's compelled to do this, so he goes in. He goes in with the knight taking the pawn, right? All right, now watch this. So now this is a series of forced moves pretty much. Morphy takes the rook, right? Okay, so now Morphy wins the exchange, but Thompson has knight to c3, discovered check, and he's going to pick up the rook. See, he's attacking the rook, but it's check right now, and white blocks with the queen, threatening queen takes queen, right? So Thompson is forced to trade queens first. Morphy has to take back, right? And now Thompson has time to finally grab his rook, right? He wins the exchange back. So now it's bishop and knight versus bishop and knight. Okay, so at this point, now Morphy takes the pawn. He wins a pawn, right? Okay, so now it's actually even. The pawns are even. Okay? Can Thompson play this? Because he's hanging, right? He figures, well, this guy's hanging. I'll take here. When white takes back, either way, maybe with the knight, then he can recapture. He can recapture the knight, right? Now, the knight's covering d3. I'm just happening to see this. So if he goes here, this is his only way out. He's got to watch. He might get trapped here. I guess he can get out. He's going to have to go here now. If he does a dumb, blunderous move, this is it. I think the knight's dead, see? Or is it? No, maybe not. He goes here. Yeah, the knight. Well, look at this. If the knight goes there, you win a pawn, see? You win a pawn by trading on d3. But look at this move by black. Look, he hits his knight. Wow, he's going to get out of this, huh? All right, practically even as far as the... We'll leave that to Karpov. That's crazy. All right, so anyway, here we go. So he takes... Now, it looks like he can take here. But then Morphy, let's see, does he do that? I don't think he does that. Let's see, 29, move 20, 28. No, he brings the bishop here to that square. He just gets his bishop out of danger. Okay, and protects the c-pawn, which is hanging. See that? The knight's forking the bishop and the pawn. Okay, so he doesn't go in for it here. And if he does, look, if he does, instead of taking the bishop, white could take down here. Okay, so they both win a pawn. And we got a scenario where, I mean, heck, can you even take this? Oh, no, you can't take the bishop's protecting that one. So you retreat over here. He goes after your pawn. You go after the bishop. He comes back out. Yeah, you know, it's putting white up. Maybe his pieces are better posted. He's got a pawn majority on the king side, 2 against 1. Black has a pawn majority on the queen side, 3 against 2. I don't know, folks. You know what's tough here, actually, is the knight is on the edge. The knight on the rim is dim. Notice that this bishop takes away these 2 squares, and the king is over here influencing that. If the knight was to come out, he's going after him. He's going after the knight. Maybe this is why white's much better. Look, he's going after the pawns over here, the b5 pawn. All right, he goes up. Look at this. He goes for the knight. The knight comes up, which only lets you take the bishop, I guess, right? Look, you win the bishop now. Oh, wait, heck, he's... All right, he's gonna try to win it back. If we take here, can he march in? I guess so, because the evaluation looks like he's got it. He can't get back in time. Look at this. You can throw a check, but you cannot even, you can't get back in time. Oh, my God. All right, so look at this. You can't even take the knight back. Isn't that a shame? I tell you, these end games are crazy, folks. They're crazy, or is it me? I'll tell you, the excitement of the end game. It's beautiful stuff. I love the end game. But anyway, okay. That's a pretty one. I don't know. Does that end up as a draw? Maybe. Well, it still looks like white. Well, white has 2 against 1 on the king side. He might be, and he's threatening that A pawn over there. He's threatening this H pawn. Let's see. You move all the way up. He attacks there. I'll tell you, if we could win that A pawn, then we would win. I think we'd win it easy. But okay, anyway, might be a draw. This is tough. I don't really know. They're putting white up almost 2. But let's see where it goes from here. He goes up a little, and then you attack the knight. The knight goes back. Let's see, what does he do? He wants to go this way. All right. Goes over here. Getting in position. He attacks your pawn, you defend it, right? Okay. So now, there's nothing going on over there. It's on this side of the board. He's trying to attack. Let's see. Sometimes you get a sacrifice like this, and then the pawn threatens, the knight's not in position, but it doesn't work here. He covers, he stops him right here. There's nothing, right? But you got to watch those sneaky knight sacrifices in these type of end games. Okay? So anyway, he moves over there. We go after him. No. So, knight here. Look at this, folks. I'm fascinated. Hold on. He's checking me here. Maybe these aren't the best moves, but it's still interesting nonetheless. He might try to trade the A pawn off for the B pawn, so you bring the knight to C5 to stop him from pushing and possibly trading him off. Because if those pawns weren't on that side, the knight could come back to the king side and help defend, and just, you know, it's an easier defense. But now that they're stuck, those knights are stuck over there, fiddling around with those pawns. It becomes like a king and pawn endgame. I heard them say that knight and pawn endgames are basically like king and pawn endgames. Here we go. He's pushing, right? There you go. He's trying to trade. I don't know why he did that. Maybe he's got nothing left. What could he really do, right? He moves here. Let's see what's coming. What's coming here? He's going after our G pawn. We check. He's got 1 square. And the knight protects this. Beautiful. All right. So now we're gonna win. We're gonna win that pawn. All right, he pushes this. He's really got nothing else. We're going to win here. That's it. Game over. All right, game over. Now, I don't know if that might not be the best moves for oh, look at this. Look at this. He's going for stalemate. Just when you think it's all over. Look. Stalemate, right? So, wait, we can't take him. What a bold knight, huh? Coming to the rescue. But we don't take him. He's always got to move with this, look at this. He's checking us now. He's going to try crazy checks. Check us to death. All right, he comes back to stop the pawn. Here we go. We're coming up. All right, the king's in a stalemate position now. So that knight might try some tricks. All right, here we go. All right, we go there. Gives the check. What does that do? What if he just stops? He stops. If he stops, here we go. We go in. We put him in the corner, right? So now we have time. The knight's out of play now. Look at that. We get mate. Look at this mate, folks. Look at this one, huh? G7 mate. Oh, that's a nice one. You got to tell. That's worth the price of admission, right, folks? Look at that. Would you fall off your seat? If you were walking, well, not falling off your seat, you pass out. If you're walking and you see two guys playing, and the other guy sets this up, forget it. You pass out you'd fall right on their table, knock the pieces around. They'd have to get the tournament director to come over to clean it up. All right. So anyway, let's go back. I mean, that's unbelievable. Can you imagine that happening in your game? All right. Look, I know we went deep into the weeds. It was worth it for that. All right, look, we go all the way back. I don't even remember how we got here. I got to admit. Okay, we were fiddling around trying to trap the knight over there, right? This all extends for, if he takes this piece, you could take this one, right? If he takes your pawn on F4, you could take the one on G7, right? And then you go into something like this. Okay, well, let's go back to what actually happened in the game, right? He takes here. Thompson putting the bishop on b6, protecting the c5 pawn. And then you got Morphy, right? That's move 28, folks, 28. We got a beautiful one here, an ending. Here we go. After that, Morphy takes the pawn like Shredder. He gobbles up the pawn, all right? Okay, so at this point, like Shredder, Thompson playing c4, okay? And then they trade pawns on c4. All right, so now Black has this passed c-pawn, and Morphy, excuse me, Morphy having a protected pass f-pawn, and basically it's 3 against 1, and even here, well, Shredder likes to grab this pawn, but here's what Morphy plays. Look at this, and they give him an exclamation point here. Bishop to d4. All right, bishop to d4. Why d4? Well, notice the king is controlling these two squares, but the bishop isn't allowing him to move, so he's being challenged. I guess, look at that. I know they gave Morphy's move an exclamation point, overtaking the material. If you take the material, well, the knight, let's see, the knight, I guess, activates, goes after this guy, he goes after him, right? And it looks like there's no way to save it. If he tries, look at this, if he tries to save it from here, can he attack the knight and basically win the bishop when the knight moves? Oh, no, we got the pawn. All right, we got the pawn. All right, I didn't see that. Okay. So we got the pawn for now. And I guess he's okay. At this point, plus 2.84. All right, and he'll go after these, but they'll just move to the light squares. No? Can't we just move them? Ah, look at this move. If he takes, look, you trap that guy. Look at this, you trap him, folks. The bishop is dead, right? Unless there's some trick of getting him out of there. Look at this. Wait a minute. Okay, what am I missing? The knight could come back to stop that pawn, but he hangs the bishop over there if he leaves, right? So look, he goes after him. He's coming in one move. Oh, okay, the bishop comes from this angle. But he surrenders this pawn. All right, I guess it's worth it. You're going to win the bishop. Now, we only, look at this. We're going to take that pawn if he tries to go in. And right now, the knight protects it, and this knight puts pressure on it. He takes this pawn since the bishop's dead. So it really comes down to this last pawn, right? For instance, if white captures the two black pawns, and if black trades the knights, you know, this pawn, if black could capture that, I mean, I don't know, is there a win here? It looks like there's +4 for white, right? Let's just see if there's any crazy sacrifices with the knight. He goes in. All right, we take him. Gets out of there. Let's see what he's going to do. Yeah, even if he sacks his knight for the pawn, we can checkmate the enemy king with a knight and bishop. That can be done, folks. That can be done. But we got to watch this pawn over here also. We got to watch this pawn. He comes over here. He gives a check first. If that means anything. Now both are hanging. That couldn't have been good. Right? Oh, he's going to, look at that. He's going to fork us. Can you believe it? If you take here, look at this, folks. He forks us, right? Just the little tricks in the end game. All right. So we can't go in right away. He moves. Now he likes this move. I guess he wants to fork from this angle. But it looks like white's got this one. He's going to capture that H pawn, and then that. Let's see. Wait a minute. Let's see this. Here he goes. He's there. He's got to save the pawn, right? I guess it doesn't matter because once you do this, right, you win it. You win it. The knight's out of play. All right, so anyway, and it's probably better ways to play that. But anyway, I was just curious. Some of these, this is such a nice ending. It's got a lot of things going on. This line, you got to watch those traps, folks. When you know the bishop goes in here, look, he goes diving in to try to win that pawn, and the white king traps him. See that? And this pawn, this black C pawn looks like a threat, but the bishop comes to H6 to stop it. Okay. All right, so anyway, when we go back, let's see, they traded pawns, and instead of taking this, which I guess is playable, right, he comes back this way. Okay, now, Thompson doesn't trade. He brings his king up and threatens the knight, which defends the bishop, right? Now, look at this. Here's a move by Shredder, but here's what Morphy does. He takes with the bishop. He takes with the bishop. And at this point, you know, Thompson doesn't want to take the knight, because then, for one, he drops this guy, right? And there's no way he could get this pawn in time. No way. Look, you attack the knight. He could go in, but we stop him. See, we stop him. Now, you don't want to try to stop him with the bishop, folks. You got to dummy up, right? Because he takes it, and then he can go in, all right? We got to dummy up. Those are the jokes. I know I didn't tell you any jokes this game, but there you go. You got one. All right? Now, you come in, you attack the knight. I mean, if he pushes this guy, well, then you got him. You know, he's dead to rights, right? So here he goes. Look at what he tries to do. He moves this guy here. You threaten the pawn. He defends the pawn, right? He defends the pawn. And then you team up on the pawn, and it's dead. And then after this, I mean, forget about it. No sense of trade, and you got nothing left. Black's dead. All right, so you can't play it that way. No way. He's got to take the bishop, folks, and that's what Thompson does. All right, so now you got the knight swinging out of danger, getting away from the black king. Coming down to D4. You got the knight going after your pawn, the A pawn. He moves up to A3. He attacks it from B1, and you don't move it. Look at this. Morphy with the knight on C2. So you see how he kind of sets up like a blockade, the knight itself prevents this pawn from coming in, and the knight and the pawn defend this guy from coming up, right? So they kind of halt the pawns. Now, Thompson pushes this guy up to get him a little closer, and now you got king to e3. And you got to watch, can the knight be trapped? Well, I don't know. I don't think so on b1. He's not going to be trapped, but after king to e3, you got king to f6. So now the kings are coming up the board. Now, look at this by Morphy. Look, take note of this move. Look, this pawn takes away the f5 square, the h5, when this other pawn here takes away the dark squares there. See that? So they make like a wall. So the black king can't come up. All right, so he moves his knight. He moves his knight to c3. And here you go, Morphy with the h-pawn coming up. So they're all in line. They're ready to advance. Here you go, knight to d5 check. Morphy brings the king up, centralized king. All right, back to c3 with a check, just being a nuisance. So I guess you could go like this, like Shredder says, but Morphy decides to move the king to f3. All right, no more checks right now for the black knight. So at this point, he goes back to put pressure on this one. Okay, he puts pressure on that a pawn. You're going to watch. Very tricky. You got to watch. Sometimes these knights sack themselves to get the pawns rolling. Okay, so you got to be careful of these tactics in the end game. All right, Morphy with a check, forcing the trade of pawns, and he takes back, like Shredder suggests, with the bishop pawn. He takes back with the f pawn. All right, so now these two pawns, they're connected past pawns, king to g6, and these two pawns opposed, they're as far away from the other side of the board as they can be, opposed to if you capture this way. You know, it's a little, the king's a little closer. He's a little closer. He might be able to kind of influence things. But this way, he's way over here, okay? Now, after that, here comes the king up to g4. Okay? This pawn comes up. You're going to see Thompson's idea. It's very clever. Interesting endgame, as I said. Here comes Morphy pushing the pawns, right? Pushing that king back. The king steps back. Thompson, king to g7. All right, now you got the king, Morphy, coming up, like Shredder suggests. Here you go. Look at this. Here comes the sack. Here comes the sack I warned you about. Look at this. Knight takes. Knight takes. Now, Morphy throws in this one first, like Shredder. Shredder figured it out, I think. He knows, he's hip. He knows what's going on. All right. Thompson bringing the king to h8. All right. Now, what if he was to, after the check, what if he was to go here? I guess it's the same. You see the plus 16 for white, right? So let's not, I don't want to give it away. Let's go with the actual game and see the magic, okay? This is beautiful. So Thompson steps into the corner. Okay, he feels the corner's the best for him, and Morphy takes the knight. Now, here was the idea for Thompson. Now that knight is going to get harassed by these two pawns. Pawn coming up. Morphy with the move. Shredder sees it. Look at this. He leaves the knight to be taken, folks. All right. Thompson's got to follow through. Now, look at this move. Makes no sense. If you were to do that, you just take, right? And if he tries to harass you, you just move back here to be able to, take on B1. There's no sense. There's no point here, right? So he doesn't advance that guy. He follows through with his idea. He takes the knight, and here comes Morphy. F6, king F6, right? And now it says threatening mate in 4. Okay, threatening mate in 4. Let's look at it. Let's say Thompson was to move this guy, hoping I'm going to queen next, right? Well, you move the king up. Now, this would be a mistake because you give him this square. Is that a mistake, or maybe it just transposes? What if he goes here, right? Oh, you'd set up one of these. Okay. You set up king to g6. You go ahead and queen, or you move this pawn. Doesn't matter, right? You go in with the queen. Look, folks. Checkmate. The king and 2 pawns. You got to remember that one, folks. Tactics in the end game, you got to love it, right? Look at this. Look at this. The pawn queens doesn't matter at all. Can't stop the pawn coming to h7. The black king has nowhere to go, right? And he's checkmated by that h7 pawn. All right, so that's one way it could go, right? So if he goes that way, you go this way. Well, if he comes up, okay, you're threatening to just go to f7, okay? And at this point, well, he could take here. He could queen. Let's say he queens, right? You get yours with check, only move, and then there you go, mated. You're mated that way. The black queen gets, comes back out of, rises from the grave, but it's useless. There's nothing it can do, right? It doesn't even get to avenge anybody. White's queen delivers mate. Okay, so here you go. We got that threat. That's the threat. So what does Thompson do? Thompson tries. Okay, king when he moves up to f6 here, Morphy's threatening mate and 4. The old masters wrote it out. Okay, they put it down here. So we just looked at it. If he advances a pawn, the king, even the check could come, or the king could march up. There's another way to do it, right? Queen. Okay, queen. You check here, right? Now it's all forced. Check, 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 right? Here you go, mate. Okay, so just transposes. Now get this. Thompson tries to swing the king here, right? Well, that doesn't help, as you can see. You just give the check with this guy now, right? You check with this guy. If he comes over here, folks, come on. You got to dummy up, right? We come right in with a touchdown, and it's mate on the back rank. Okay, so he's got to go in the block, right? Now you move the king up here, okay? That black king is in a stalemate position, can go nowhere, and it pretty much transposes. Here comes the G pawn with a check, takes, dives in for a touchdown, check. There he goes, right? Game over. All right, so there you go. After this move, folks, look. After the check, king over, you got Morphy with move 51, king to f7, and wins. Thompson resigns. So there you have it, folks. A beautiful ending. Maybe one of the prettiest endings we've seen yet, I mean, there's been a couple, but this one, this was nice. You got to admit, some of the sidelines, real pretty. All right, so anyway, there you go. Morphy tying it up, baby. Tying up the match. Can he take over? Can he actually take the lead and win this one, folks? You're going to have to stay tuned. All right, so we'll continue the onslaught, right? We'll continue the saga as we go. See you next time on Morphy's Games of Chess.